Good morning. Can I welcome you all to the meeting of the executive this morning on the 13th of December. I'd like to remind everyone in attendance in the meeting that the committee is being live streamed on YouTube and it will be available for repeated viewing. You are asked to put your mobile phones off and also to put yourselves on mute unless you're contributing to the meeting to ensure the quality of the sound. You'd also ask please to raise your virtual hand, or in the executive also you can raise your physical hand in order to come into the discussion. So before going on any further, I'd also like to welcome the members in attendance outside the executive, Councillor Glyn Haynes, Councillor Trevor Lloyd-Hughes, Councillor David Roberts, Councillor Ken Hughes and Councillor Aled Morris-Jones are in attendance. I don't think I've missed any other member of the executive who's not a member of the executive out, so welcome you all. And also can I welcome the officers, the Chief Executive, Anwen Morgan. Good morning everyone. Deputy Chief Executive Dylan Williams. Good morning everyone. Director of Function, Mr. Rhys Hughes, Mr. Mark Jones, Director of Finance and Section 151 Officer, good morning. Mr. Rhys Howard Hughes, Director of Education, Skills and Learning Young People, good morning everyone. Christian Branch, Head of Regulation and Economic, good morning. Hugh Percy, Head of Highways, Property and Waste. Mrs. Caris Edwards, Head of HR Profession. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Matthew Henshaw, IT Manager. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Owain Davis, Senior Primary Sector Manager. Owain apologises this morning. He's been called to sort something else out. Thank you, Rhys. Mr. Arwel Winowen, Head of Adult Services, is also in attendance. Good morning, everyone. Anwen Jones, Policy Officer, Rhian Jones, Policy Officer, and I think that is everyone. I don't think I missed anyone. Can I also welcome Anne Holmes and Maidwen Hughes, the officers keeping the minutes, and also to Arwel and the translation team as well. So good morning to you all. Before going to the agenda, I'd like to draw attention. Obviously, we are all aware of the situation that we face at the moment with COVID here on the island. And I'd like to just strengthen that message and re-emphasize the message. Once you get a letter or an appointment to booster, that you should take that up. And also please ask everyone to take those necessary steps to safeguard yourselves that have come naturally to us now. Remember about the ventilation, wearing a mask, and please remember these things are important and that we do these things. So we are coming to a period now where we will be saying farewell to 2021, and we are in a similar situation to where we were at the start of the year. So it's very important for us all to take that responsibility to safeguard ourselves and each other and our communities during this uncertain period. And also I'd like to thank at the beginning of the meeting like this, just to thank everyone who's gone that extra mile, done everything possible during this last year to ensure the continuity of the authority and to keep the island safe, and who have served. So I thank you to take those messages back to the council staff, that we as executive wish everyone a very Merry Christmas, and we also show our appreciation to them for what they've done over the last year. And I'd like to extend that wishes to all elected members and everyone on the island. It is a very difficult period, but we've shown through collaboration that we can look after each other, and that's what we'll have to do during the next few weeks as well. Thank you. So we'll go on to the agenda. The first item is the declarations of interest. to receive. Has anybody got any declarations of interest, any member or office in respect of any item of business this morning? Councillor Maidan Jones. Yes, with item 6, 7 and 8, as well as being a portfolio holder for education, I'm also, as a result of that, a director of Cynnal Company, and because of that, I express that I have a personal and prejudicial interest, and I won't be taking part in those items. Thank you, Maidan. Councillor Ian Williams. Yes, item 6, 7 and 8 are to do with my employment, so I express an interest and I'll be leaving the meeting for those items. Before I bring Chase in, I'll be expressing an interest on behalf of all the members of the executive that have had permission to speak on the 12th of November, which gives us the right to take part in the discussion on items 6, 7 and 8 on the agenda. So I hope that is sufficient. Jesus, that I do that on behalf of the other members. Yes, I'm sure that those minuting there will note the names of everyone, councillors that are to do with the matter. I am aware of the permission that has been granted following a standards committee meeting gave you the right to, and for clarity, I will just name those: Councillor Richard Dew, Councillor Robin Williams, Councillor Carwyn Jones, Councillor David Hughes-Thomas, Councillor Alan Mummery, and Councillor Bob Parry, and myself, Councillor Llinás Medi. So I'll go on to Rhys Howard Hughes. Thank you. Thank you. I'm also a director of Cwmni Cynnal and won't be taking part in 6, 7 and 8. Thank you. So with that, are there any other declarations of interest before we go on to the second item? No, thank you very much. The second item is urgent matters certified by the Chief Executive or her appointed officer. Good morning. There are no urgent matters this morning. Thank you. We go on therefore to the third item, which is the Executive's Forward Work Programme. And I turn to Rhian Jones for taking us through this. Thank you very much. This update is to do with the period between January and August of next year. There are 4 changes today. Number 4, the lowering the age of admission at Ysgol Llandegwan. That's a new item that's down for the 24th of January. Number 7, there's a change to the timeline with the local housing strategy, moving from the January meeting to the 14th of February. Number 11 is a new item, school transport, public services, vehicles, accessibility regulations. That's on the 14th of February 2022. There's one other new item which is not on the papers. The housing development over 10 units, land near Penrose Stanley, Holyhead. That needs to be added to the 24th of January meeting, and that's all for today. Okay, thank you for that. Any questions or comments regarding the Forward Work Programme at all? If I can confirm, therefore, that the Forward Work Programme is correct, anyone willing to second that? Councillor Ian Williams seconds that. If I can have the votes, Councillor Maidan Jones. Agree. Councillor Richard Dew. Agrees. Councillor Robin Williams. Agrees. Councillor Carwyn Jones. Accepts, but I will be expressing an interest in item 4 when it is up, but I accept it in its entirety. That's fine. Councillor David Hughes-Thomas. Agrees. Councillor Alan Mummery accepts, and Councillor Bob Parry accepts as well. Thank you very much. So we move on now to the 4th item on the agenda, which is establishing a new Port Health Authority. So I turn to the portfolio holder. My screen's going everywhere. Sorry, I'm trying to find you, Councillor Richard Dew. Thank you, Chair. Yes, because the withdrawal of the United Kingdom from the European Union, a new border control arrangements and checks need to be established as a result of the European Union Withdrawal Act 2018. Welsh Government are responsible for these requirements, and its two new facilities have been built in Parcybi to conduct these checks that are coming in or leaving the UK through the Holyhead port. The HMRC are developing a new border control and inland border facility, which is going to be on this old site of Road King, and Welsh Government are establishing a border control post at the moment, and that's on plot 9, again in Parcybi. Even though Welsh Government is responsible for this site, to establishing this places extra responsibilities on the County Council as the authority that the main responsibilities that will be set on the council come under the Public Health Act, Managing Diseases 1984, and the report concentrates on especially the need to establish a Port Health Authority, a new Port Health Authority. Will have a responsibility for enforcing the health regulations for the UK to protect the public environment, and the Port Health Authority has to be established by July 2022, next year, when checks on products of animal origin will be introduced in order for the Council to discharge the statutory duties, which include a range of documentary, identity and physical checks. The Regulation and Economic Development Service officers have been engaging with the Welsh Government since August 2022 to better understand the anticipated changes to the border checks. And despite the best endeavours of the officers, there is a lack of information and clarity, which has impacted on the Council's ability to plan and prepare meaningfully for the anticipated changes to the border controls. It should also be noted that the Council does not currently have any port health expertise, capacity or capability at the moment. The work to develop the Port Health Authority is happening through a one-off support grant by Welsh Government, and there's no clarity or certainty at the moment in terms of future funding beyond the potential generation of income arising from checking the documents. There'll be no additional financial support in place beyond March 2022. The service believes that there are two potential options available to the Council to be able to discharge its new port health duties, which are to establish a new arm's-length Port Health Authority for Holyhead, or secondly, to discharge the duties in-house within the Council without establishing a new Port Health Authority. And now I'll hand over to the head of the Regulation Economic Department, who can say a little bit more about both options. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Good morning. I don't intend to go into all the details that have been noted in the report itself, but I'd like to just note that further work needs to be done to review and assess the suitability of both options and which one is favoured. And this development work will include reviewing the corporate governance arrangements, risks, costs, and the need for assistance from other departments within the Council. Also, there'll be a need for an implementation plan for the Port Health Authority to ensure that the Council is administering its rights, and finally, and most importantly, the recruitment process will need to begin to ensure we have experienced and suitable officers to undertake this work. Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you to both of you. Can I open it out to the executive for any questions or comments you wish to make at all on what you hear before? Or Richard, do you want to? I'll bring Robin in first, sorry. Yes, I don't think this one very important question that we have to ask as regards this is in the question, and that is, how will this be funded after March 2022? We don't know how much traffic will come from Ireland or that will go over to Ireland through Holyhead. And they're talking about being able to create income from the checks that will be made. But at the end of the day, we do have to have this body in place, and there's no assurance of any income. So I think this is an important question that we must ask Welsh Government, because it could be a significant financial burden on the taxpayers of Anglesey. And of course, not each authority does face this type of financial burden because they don't have a port or airport where this happens. So one of the recommendations talks about putting pressure on Welsh Government, and I think we have to go further than that. And I think that we should be sending a letter directly to Welsh Government regarding this issue, and that we should be demanding that they fund the work, and that is something that is included in our budget, not only for 2022, but it's something that should be funded beyond that for the future as well. So I propose that we add that into the proposal and the recommendations that come under number 4. I know that Richard hasn't gone through them yet, but I think that's something very important that needs to be added. Thank you. Thank you, Robin, and thank you for your comments. What we'll do is add that into the recommendation when we go through them at the end. Carwyn next, then Marion. No, good morning. No, agree with what has been said there by the portfolio holder for finance. I think we should send a letter to Welsh Government as soon as possible, seeing the recommendations that we should release 100,000, and we don't have much choice really, do we, of the council finances to develop this. I don't see it really fair. We have to do it. We don't have a choice because it's statutory. It's £100,000 of the money of people of Anglesey, the taxpayers of Anglesey. This money should have come from Welsh Government already for us to be able to set it up, not that we ask the people of Anglesey to provide 100,000 to set it up. It is not fair. We didn't ask for Brexit, but we have to deal with it. We have the border control post, and that's Welsh Government. We have the inland border facility. We've had meetings with them as groups quite regularly, and the local members in Holyhead. And I know the local members of Holyhead have concerns because of especially the border control post. They seem to be dragging their heels very much to move this forward. And I know that local members, I see them nodding here now, feel that they are hitting their heads against the wall with this. Plot 9, I'm not sure how many times I've heard that phrase, plot 9, and it's not fair. They are dragging their heels with every aspect of this. The inland border facility, we see they're moving with that. They seem a lot more with it and know what they're doing with that. And you can see the steps that they're taking to put this together. But the border control post, this is very frustrating. And we see today how this is down to us as a council level. We have to find 100,000 now to do duties rather than getting the 100,000 from Welsh Government. Another aspect that we're not going to discuss it today, but Johnson in his flagship post with the free port, we've got no clearer with this either. We've asked for the advantages and disadvantages of that. Everything is just a mess, to be honest, and it's time is ticking past, and we want money from Welsh Government to do our part, which is statutory, so agree. Thank you. Thank you, Carwyn, Councillor Marion Jones, and then David Rhys. Yes, my colleagues, as you've heard already, know a bit more than I do on this matter, but in principle, I think it's a disgrace, to be honest, that there's a financial pressures being put on us and financial uncertainty being placed on ourselves. and the responsibilities that we receive without having financial assurances to be able to achieve them. As I say, it's a matter of principle for myself, to be honest. And I'll say it again, it's a disgrace that this is happening. I'll leave the details to my colleagues. Thank you. Thank you, Meiran. Councillor David Hughes Thomas. Yes, thank you. As a local member, very local member, quite close to where I live, to be honest, I'd like to know how this is going to affect the local residents that are living in the area. Local people are worried about the size of the facility that's going to be located here. And because traffic has been reduced so much, will it need such a big area? We don't know. Also, over the weekend, we've seen a lot of lorries parking everywhere at the side of the roads and the supermarkets in Holyhead, and we're all aware of the problem that's going to bring. I do ask the HMRC, have been very good at communicating with local people, but those who are going to develop plot 9, there's no mains water even being put in there, or sewerage, there's no electricity there. They're using solar panels to light up the place. I am asking HMRC and Welsh Government to come together and to have a meeting to let the people of Holyhead know what's happening, and is there any provision at all or new type of roading that will enable lorries to park overnight. Thank you for those comments. The challenge that exists here is that there are a number of different agencies trying to establish something new for the Holyhead area. And we want to try and highlight and safeguard the port, which is essential, and all the jobs that are linked to the port. And then also, as you note, reduce the negative impacts that we've seen over the weekend, for example, and I can get assurance, I think, from the Chief Executive that those discussions are happening through the Chief Executive, where she is calling on the Welsh Government to progress these issues sooner rather than later. But as regards what's before us here today, what's been presented to us today is to establish a new Port Health Authority here, and which will be totally new for Anglesey County Council, and as is a byproduct of the need to leave Europe. So there are recommendations. Are there any other comments or anything else that people want to say before we go through the recommendations? So I'll ask Councillor Richard Dew to go through the recommendations, then we'll adapt if there's agreement, the wording. If you go through them, then we'll adapt. Okay, thank you. So before going through the recommendations, just to add to what's been said from the other members of the executive, the officers of the council have been in discussions with the Welsh Government for a year and a half now, and none the wiser how this is going to be funded. HMRC are moving forward with their site, but Welsh Government, when we want to establish plot 9 site, there's nothing seems to be moving with that, and this is supposed to be up and running by next July, and there's only 6 months till then, until this has to be in place. And as has been said, we don't know how it's going to be funded, we don't have the capacity, where are these officers going to come from? I'm not, the timeline is critical now. Having said that, the recommendations are, first, to recognise the statutory requirement to establish a new Port Health Authority. Secondly, to delegate responsibility to the Head of Regulation and Economic Development Service in consultation with the senior leadership team and portfolio holder to identify and develop a preferred option for establishing a new Port Health Authority. Thirdly, to recognise that further developmental work is carried out at risk to the County Council and that resources will be provided to the Head of Service Regulation and Economic Development, value and scope to be agreed with the Council's Section 151 officer. Fourthly, to continue to press the Welsh Government to adequately and fairly finance the Council's new and additional responsibilities for the development, to establishment and initial operation of a new Port Health Authority, and to underwrite all additional costs incurred by the Council which are not recovered through the income generated by the Port Health Authority. And maybe it's here we need to add something, that we write a letter to Welsh Government urgently for response to this issue. And fifthly, to authorise the release of £100,000 from the Council general balances to complete the above, which the Council will seek to recover from the Welsh Government. And any additional funding above this sum will require a further decision from the Executive or full Council in accordance with the limits set on the Council's constitution. Thank you. Thank you. I'll bring Robin back in. Yes, thank you. I'm totally happy to second that proposal with that addition under point 4. So thank you to Councillor Richard Dew for adding that. Thank you. And thank you, Richard, for that. We'll go out through us now for the vote. Councillor Ian Williams supports. Councillor Marion Jones agrees. Councillor Carwyn Jones accepts. Councillor David Thomas, happy to support. Councillor Alan Memory accepts. And Councillor Bob Parry supports. Thank you very much, everyone. We move on now to the 5th item on the agenda, which is the establishment of North Wales Region's Corporate Joint Committees. As we are all aware, Welsh Government have made the CJCs statutory, and what this report is the first step as regards moving the North Wales Ambition Board over to being a corporate joint committee. And these are the pragmatic steps that we can take in relation to doing what the legislation tells us to do. I think it is important to note at the beginning that this authority did object to the CJCs at the beginning. And from the outset, so we've put pressure many times on the Welsh Government because we don't see it adding any value to creating these mandatory, but they are now mandatory and there's not much choice by us as members to do this. So the recommendations that are put forward are to agree in principle that the functions of the North Wales Economic Ambition Board are be transferred by the way of delegation agreement to the North Wales Corporate Joint Committee on condition that the statutory framework that the Welsh Government are developing allows for the delegation of the relevant executive functions to a corporate joint committee, and that the North Wales Corporate Joint Committee agrees to establishment of a subcommittee with membership to be agreed with the councils to undertake the functions of the Economic Ambition Board. I think we've all been on this journey and are all aware of the challenges, and it's important that we note at the beginning that we're not doing this by choice, but I'm opening it out. The Chief Executive, do you want to add anything to that before we go on? Thank you very much. No, there's nothing much to add. As you've said, it's a pragmatic step. Second, what you're saying that this is the first step, and there will be many decisions again to come before the councils in relation to this issue moving forward to the future. Nothing further to add. Dinos, thank you. Thank you, but I do open it out to the executive now. Have you got any questions or comments you want to make? I'll start with Councillor Robin Williams. Yes, thank you very much. It's important, I think, to explain to the public what this body that's going to be created is, the CJCs, as we refer to them in English. It's a body that isn't elected. It's a body that's going to be put in place by Welsh Government as an additional layer of governance across North Wales region and other regions of Wales. And the idea goes against democracy, really. The government in Cardiff has been elected, we've been elected, and then they put another layer of bureaucracy in the middle, which possibly, well, not possibly, really, it's going to cost hundreds of thousands of pounds each year to us here in Anglesey. It's going to cost hundreds of thousands to each local authority across Wales. And I think this is something that the public have to be aware of. As regards funding this is going to be funded through a levy system, and very simply, the levy system is they'll send us a bill every year and we'll have to pay it. We don't have a choice in the matter. We don't have a choice to make contribution. The only thing that will happen is they'll send us the bill and we'll have to pay it. There'll be a demand to pay it within 30 days or whatever. And I think this is a disgrace, to be honest. That's what Welsh government are doing. And they're just creating a layer of bureaucracy that there's no need for. But, you know, we've been saying this for a long time and we're none the wiser having done so. But I think it is important that the public know what is going on and what the impact is going to be, because there will be an impact of this on our taxpayers here in Anglesey, and that's not through our choice. Thank you. Thank you, Robin. Thank you for that explanation. Councillor Bob Parry. Yes, agree with what Councillor Robin Williams has said. As a member on the Transport Sub-Panel, as we're called, this resurrects an old body that used to exist, and that's reported back to our own council at the time. Now the decisions will go out of our hands, and in the end we have to remember we in Anglesey with our transports don't have as much clout as Wrexham and Flintshire have, for example. So we have to just accept it. But from the other side, I'm not happy at all that we have to pay for it also. And also it could have an effect on our staffing, because this board will be looking for staff, and it's very easy for us to lose some experienced staff to that organisation. Thank you, Bob. Councillor Richard Dew. Yes, thank you. Yes, just agree with what's being said. We as a council, we've objected to the CJCs from the beginning, but Welsh governments haven't taken any notice. They've carried on with them. We're talking about the cost, how much is going to cost for the taxpayers of Anglesey and the North Wales taxpayers, but also coming from the planning perspective. For example, we were talking previously about the Port Health Authority, for example, that we haven't got the capacity to do that. But with the planning department, you know, the capacity isn't there, not only in Anglesey. I'm not sure if the capacity is there throughout the region. The department have to do the day-to-day work. They're reviewing the joint local development plan, and then the strategic development plans. You know, I'm not sure where Welsh government think we're going to get the officers to do all this work. It's a problem, and I'm not sure the way we're going. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Maiden-Jones. Yes, thank you. And thank you to my colleagues for their comments, especially the clarification by Robin for the background. As far as education is in the question at the moment, for some years now, in North Wales, we've been collaborating through the GWER body, and it's been developed and been accepted as a significant success, and that is run by the 6 counties through representation and so on. But there's exceptional collaboration that has been in existence between the councils in North Wales and through GWER also. And that's the way forward, I would think, that's the way to get success. But on a matter of principle, again, this morning, I'm objecting to this extra layer of bureaucracy that's going to be presented. And, you know, maybe we're naive in thinking that Gware will be absorbed or be swallowed up in a new body as a regional education service, maybe, and that the local regulations will be weakened, if not disappeared. So one is raising their voice, but obviously it's a voice in the desert in this case. So it's important that we explain in this meeting to the public, and also that we state that we give our comments clearly, and hopefully that Welsh Government will hear our voices even though they don't listen. Thank you. Thank you. I'll bring Councillor in memory in. Can I also thank Councillor Robin Williams for summarising it so tidily and voicing our concerns now and what they've been in the past and what they will be in the future. But what's concerning me more than anything is how much awareness do the public have of what this means, because very little public discussion has been held on this matter. Almost nothing. It hasn't had much attention by the media or anything. Is one of the small twos, but I don't think the public know exactly what's going to happen. I'm very thankful to Robin Williams for putting it so simply this morning. And as has been referred to, our objection and other authorities' objection has fallen on deaf ears. It's too late, to be honest. We've had a statement this week that tomorrow is too late, and that is the case here as well. Thank you. Thank you to all for your comments. There are no comments that are inconsistent from the messages we've been expressing over the last few years about creating such organisations. It's an organisation where the 6 leaders will be there for a vote. But the challenge under this body is that there are officers from the government that are going to be there creating the recommendations, and the local democracy and local voice will disappear almost. That is the challenge. Councillor Davies Thomas. Yes, I think we all agree about the importance of local democracy. And I've looked at this and I can't see what additional value this board is going to bring us as residents and taxpayers of Anglesey. Thank you. Okay, thank you everyone. Following your comments, I know it's after the event and we've done everything possible to stop this from happening, but Councillor Robin Williams has highlighted the cost, the financial cost, and the pressures that are going to be on the taxpayers of Anglesey. Do you want to add the recommendation, which is very similar to the last one really, that we call on Welsh Government to fund these CJCs in their entirety because it's their wish and that they should fund them in full? Robin, do you want to come in? Yes, I would agree with that. At the end of the day, this is the wish of Welsh Government to create these bodies. Well, as far as I'm in the question, if they want to create a body and it be a body that isn't have elected representatives, I think they should be funding it. So I would be happy to put that in as one of our, well, add that into one of our recommendations. Okay, so the recommendations were that we agree in principle to the functions of a corporate joint on condition that the statutory framework that the Welsh Government are developing allows for the delegation of the relevant executive functions to a corporate joint committee, and B, that the North Wales Corporate Joint Committee agrees to establishment of a subcommittee with membership to be agreed with the councils to undertake the functions of the Economic Ambition Board. And then the recommendation we would add there is that we send a letter to Welsh Government asking them to fund the CJCs in full as it is their wish to establish them. Yes, if that's okay. Is there a seconder to that? Councillor Ian Williams seconds. So I do have a seconder there. Can we also therefore go through the vote? Councillor Maidan Jones? Yes, accept. Councillor Richard Dew? Accepts. Councillor Robin Williams? Yes, accept. Councillor Carwyn Jones? Accepts. Councillor David Rhys Thomas? Accepts. Councillor Alan Mummery? Accepts. And Councillor Bob Parry? Accepts. Okay, thank you very much. We therefore go on to item 6 on the agenda. Councillor Ian Williams, Marion Jones, and Director of Education will now leave us. Yes, thank you. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the next item of the agenda, which is item 6, the Anglesey Digital School Strategy. And I will present the strategy. As we're all aware, the digital context has changed over the last few months, never mind the last few years. And the intention of this strategy is to create a strategy to make our schools ready for the next step. And this strategy is here for us to be adopted today, and the recommendations are that the executive approve the draft school strategy and that we as an executive authorise additional funding of 135,439 in order to implement the strategy. As I said, the strategy takes us forward as regards moving the digital sector forward in the education, and during COVID-19 we've seen how essential the digital services are to ensure the continuity of the service in education and to make sure that we can give the best options possible to our teachers and pupils and those families. So I'll open it out now. I think Dylan Williams, the Deputy Chief Executive, wants to come in.
Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's okay. We are busy working towards the next quarter of this century. And as the leader says, things are changing constantly. More and more, the importance of technology and the digital world is growing. And even though there are hubs here across the country and in Anglesey, who have worked to keep up with the times, to show that our hardware is up to scratch. But I think it's fair to say that the people have the ability to adapt and have used the technology over the past 2 years, especially during the pandemic, to cope, but also to be able to move forward with their lives. And this is obvious in education. Technology is an essential skill. And when young people leave school, then they are more likely to succeed in the world if they have digital skills. And of course, the digital world will continue to evolve moving forward. This strategy has been put together to give us a direction, and I would say us, I mean, as in the wider context of the authorities, schools, and everyone who's to do with education. I do stress it isn't the council strategy, and we will be working as an authority with the schools, with everyone within education, to try and make sure that we can do our best. Implementing the strategy is essential to the council, staff, schools, but especially young people, for them to be able to move forward in education and into the workplace, and to take part effectively in society. I won't go through the document, but I'd like to draw your attention to page number 5. And there's a strategy there that lists everything, the vision, supporting schools to realise their long-term potential. And then there are general principles relevant to everyone who will play a part in this strategy: commitment, investment, collaboration, equality, accountability, communication, and transparency. And then there are key priority areas in the yellow band, the third one. And these aren't in any order of priority. But if they aren't successful, then the others won't be successful. So they're all linked together. They're all as important as each other. We hope and cloud first, and we will have effective networks, data protection and digital resilience. It needs to be given attention, that the council plays its part, that schools play their part, and that the hardware is in place to allow everybody to use the software to its full potential. Governance, monitoring will be important, and also need to stress that reporting or adapting will also be important if the world around us is moving quickly. And this is why it isn't a very a long-term strategy. It's for the here and now, and we will need to adapt moving forward. And lastly, I'd like to thank the staff under Matthew's leadership in IT and the learning service and others who have put an input into this strategy. Hopefully it's a concise but clear strategy that is easy to understand, and it's been put together on top of other challenges. So I'd like to thank everyone, and also the head teachers that we've engaged with informally for their inputs to make sure that we're going in the right direction and that people understand and support where we're hoping to get. So with those few words, I hope that it will be assistance and will help us to this morning to adopt the strategy into the next year and see how the world around us adapts so that we can succeed. Thank you, Dylan. Thank you for taking us through that. Councillor David Rhys-Thomas. Yes, thank you. I don't want to repeat what Dylan has just said. Just add a few things, and thank to Matthew and the team for bringing this document to us. It's been written concisely and set out easily, and it's very clear to us all. And I do like the part that refers to the user, the end user experience, because they're our customers. So I do like that part of it. I think we could all agree that we haven't invested enough in technology for a long time now. And now there's a chance, a fantastic opportunity for us to do this with this new exciting strategy, so that to put Anglesey education in a strong place for the future. Thank you, David. And can I also thank everybody who has been part of this at a time where there is tremendous stress on everyone. So thank you all for your input. Are there any questions or any comments from anyone? Councillor Carwyn-Jones. Yes, thank you. And thank you to the officers for the report. It's so important. And I think Dylan has summarised it very well. As governors, we know how important it is, how important technology is for us as governors, how important it is to teachers in preparing the education. And as a parent, for the children, they all have their own Hope email. Hope has been an excellent resource, and each child has their own email. There are excellent resources on Hope, learning resources. And what we've seen as well during the past 12 months is we've moved forward more in the past 12 months with regards to IT and the importance of IT than we did in 10 years previously. So I think it's important that we keep this momentum going. IT is so important, and it's important that we have a system that moves with the time. And I know that good work is going on, and with this strategy, I am confident that we will lead the way. And you never know one day on Anglesey, we will have the next Bill Gates or the Zuckerberg. So thank you very much, and I fully support it. Thank you. Thank you, Carwyn. Are there any questions or comments? I'll remind you of the recommendations that we approve the draft digital school strategy and approve the additional funding of £135,439 to implement the strategy. Councillor Robin Williams. Yes, I'm happy to second and support the comments that have already been made. We really do need to invest in this field for our children and for their future. So I'm happy to second the proposal. Thank you, Robin. So we'll go to the vote. Councillor Richard Dew.
Well, Richard Dew.
I can't see him on the screen. Richard Dew. Move to Councillor Carwyn Jones. Accept. Thank you. Councillor David Rhys Thomas. Accept. Thank you. Councillor Richard Dew is back. Sorry, I lost signal. I accept. Thank you, Councillor Alan Mummery. Accept. Thank you, and Councillor Bob Parry. Accept. Thank you very much. So we're moving on now to the 7th item on the agenda. So excluding the press and public. So the explanation behind this. So the public interest test. So we doing this before moving forward to item 8, the Anglesey Digital School Strategy and Cwmni Cynnal. So the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So there is public interest in disclose the exists a strong public interest in not disclosing information that relates to the finances or business affair of individuals, particularly in circumstances where a duty of confidence is owed or expected. The public interest also applies to the financial and business affairs of the Council in respect of information in the reports. Sorry, Robin Hughes. How to use people's surnames, Robin Hughes. I take it then as the solicitor that you recommend for us to exclude the public and the press. So Lynn Ball, the previous monitoring officer, is absent because of sickness at the moment. So I'm standing in her place. I've had a chance to go through the papers. At the front of the item, there is reference made to the exemptions, the legal exemptions, which means that the legal recommendations that the public and the press should be excluded, because the next item is to do with divulging information, personal information regarding an individual and financial information. Thank you very much for that explanation. So can I have a proposal to the recommendation? So I'll propose, and can I have a seconder? Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Bob Parry, seconding. And I'll go through for the vote. Councillor Richard Dew, agree. Councillor Robin Williams, agree. Councillor Carwyn Jones, agree. Thank you, Councillor David Rhys Thomas, agree.